First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very proud to represent Banker Holding. Before I forget, my name is Robin van Elderen. I'm the MD for the Rotterdam office, where I'm pretty much involved in the procurement for the region. Other than that, I'm also part of the green team, as we call it, within the company. We are sort of a project group helping to sort of decarbonize the industry, both internally and externally. So how do we prepare our company and how do we prepare our customers along with that? So my agenda for today is just very quickly three items to discuss. Very high level introduction of our company, who we are and what we do, because most likely our company is unknown to most of you in the room. Secondly, I would like to highlight some of the regulatory drivers into the decarbonization of the shipping. Some of the items have already been addressed earlier today, so I will just sort of quickly go over it. And then lastly, how do we comply to these regulations and what do we see as sort of immediate solutions to decarbonize the solution? And that might be sort of the question for you, Ian. Hopefully that will help. Banker Holding, very quickly, we are the leading fuel supplier on a global basis, both on the conventional and alternative fuels. We are part of USTC Group, which is a Danish family-owned company, which is actually having various activities across the group. I will only touch upon a few, which is GRM, Global Risk Management, which is actually a risk management solution company, providing solutions across all industries, including the shipping industry. And then Unitankers, so we're also into the same discussion modes as you are into the offshore industry. We are operating a pool of 42 tankers globally, mostly small and medium-sized tankers. Out of the pool of 42 vessels, currently we have 16 owned vessels. So we come across the same challenges like we have already touched upon earlier morning. Within Banker Holding, so what we do is we simply sort of connecting the dots between the fuel supplier and the end user. So we're taking care of the entire supply chain. We're being seen as the reliable and sort of trusted partner. So basically on the needs of our clients, on their fuel needs on a global scale, we are putting together the right fit for the supplier based on the right quality, basis the right prices, looking into price risk management, volatility, quality control, all legal aspects, and making sure that we are compliant, and also actually doing sort of the last mile delivery and monitoring the entire supply chain, pretty much from A to Z. Very quickly, from a numbers perspective, we've got a team of 1,500 people globally, from front office to back office, dealing with a customer base across all segments of 4,500 customers plus. And basically for the global coverage, we are taking care of supplies in 1,764 ports to be precise. And last year we've supplied a little over 25 million tons plus. Just to have a bit of an idea. I think other than obviously we're dealing with our suppliers, also trying to help to decarbonize the industry, we definitely see a big push from the regulatory affairs on the push, other than it might come from your clients or potentially from your banks. This is the slide we've seen earlier in the morning, so I don't want to sort of repeat the story, but I think we can clearly see the ultimate goal set by the IMO, which was the revised strategy, which was introduced in July 2023. I think, or we think, what will be sort of the main target or sort of the main driver will be the 2030 set point for 5% zero emission fuels. And that's going to be the big game changer, because based on where we see the situation today, we have to make, or the industry have to make decisions which are taken from the supply chain, which take 3 to 5 year lead time to be ready to be able to have the fuels available by 2030. We talk roughly about 20-25 million tons, metric tons on an annual basis, and we're simply not there yet. So this is going to be a big question mark and a big uncertainty as well. So what do we see in place already? Some of the items have already been addressed earlier today. CII, not in place yet as far as for the offshore industry, but we do know that IMO is looking into it. So I think thanks to the good work, keep on pushing for by the IMCA, let's try to stay out of the CI. Another one, EU ETS, which is, I think, is inevitable, which just came into force 1st of January this year. We see that the industry is still sort of digesting its way or trying to get its head around on how to comply with that. The offshore sector will come into play by 2027. But obviously this is definitely going to be a big game changer for all the ships moving in and out of the European waters. It's phased out, as we have seen, in 3 years, so by 2027 it will have its impact for by 100%. It's basically it's a tax on CO2 emissions, whereby basically the buyer or a ship owner can buy its way out as part of the Fit for 55. Another one which will come into play is the Fuel EU Maritime, and that's actually a bit of a different approach, because actually that will force the customer to burn alternative and low carbon fuels. So this is not, there is no way to get around it. I will get back to it a little bit later on the following slide. The other one, which is also a big question mark, and we just recently have the MEPC 81, which was 3 weeks ago. It will be the IMO midterm measurements. They will be announced by 2025, and they will come into play by 27 as well. So we do believe that 2027 is sort of going to be the key year where all the changes will have its impact, because also Fuel EU Maritime is most of the offshore vessels are not impacted by it from next year, but by 2027 the entire offshore industry will be. So again, 1st of January 2027 is where things will start to materialize. Fuel EU Maritime, I think we've seen earlier this morning, we've seen a very deep dive into the regulation. So I will skip most of it. I think the interesting part is that it was sort of give an answer to the gentleman who had a question this morning, talk about CO2 equivalent. This is actually, if you can see on the left, it's based on the energy used on ships of board, which is different than just the CO2 emissions. So what we will see from 2025 in the following 25 years with the achievement of 60% reduction, so change every other 5 years, is that every ship owner this within the Fuel EU Maritime, which is covering all EU ports, for 50% for in and out and for 100% for all ships trading within EU waters, that it will have to comply based on the energy used, and that will come into the calculations on grams CO2e equivalent per megajoule. So it's a new set of regulations, a new set of calculations as well. And for everybody in the room, this is overly what will be applicable to you as well. So we have to get, I think we still have a few years to go, so that's a good thing. We're trying to get our head around it as well, based on how the calculations will look like, because there will be carbon factors on the products that will be used based on the type of feedstocks if we look into biofuels. Because just to give a bit of an idea, if we look into the graph on the right side from where we are today and trying to achieve the 80%, we can see as an example, as a B30 from Villers-Avaux, is that will make it actually the cut at least to 2440 to be able to be compliant. So we see a very strong case for biofuels, at least for the next 10 to 15 years, to make it work, specifically from a Fuel EU Maritime perspective. And bear in mind, by 2027, IMO will also come into force with the new regulations, which we don't know how it will look like, but most likely it will have a global reduction on emissions as well, which might be sort of similar into what we see from Fuel EU Maritime as well. And equally, they will also put a carbon tax on the fossil fuels, which we've heard talks about $150 per ton. So again, a lot of changes, a lot of complexities, and a lot of headaches. So how do we see our way to sort of to comply to this? From a short-term to mid-term perspective, I think the conventional fuels, high sulfur fuel, middle distillates will be sort of the dominant products. In the meantime, we have seen already biofuels coming into play, like I've just already mentioned, and we have seen the initial uptick from LNG perspective, mostly to the new builds, and we will expect that to continue into the midterm as well. At the same time, we have seen also in the previous presentations that new fuels will come into play, It's methanol, ammonia. We already see sort of the infrastructure is being built in various locations. Biomethane, the e-fuels, which is our fuels which are produced from renewable energy resources like wind and solar. And eventually we will see hydrogen-based products as well. Our view, at least from Bunker Holding, is that these products will not be dominant before 2035. It's very difficult to predict the future fuel mix. I think it's very, very clear that there is no one size fits all, and it's going to be a future fuel environment. Therefore, we see actually a very strong case for biofuels. So from a headache perspective, from the roadblocks, like we've just said, on all the alternative fuels, it's some of them might be very obvious. It's just a very high cost of entry from the supply chain perspective. It's new producers coming into the market. If we look into methanol, ethanol, ammonia, hydrogen-based, is how do we build these new factories? How do we make sure that we have the right vessels to be able to supply these bunkers to your vessels? So these obviously are all decisions which also take with the lead time. It's a big question, and it's very insecure. We talk about availability, global availability. I've mentioned in the beginning that we are serving 1,764 ports globally. In the majority of the ports, we have the conventional fuels, high sulfur fuel, gas oil, pretty much ready available. So imagine this, that we have to shift the entire sort of supply chain in all these ports globally, making sure we have all these multiple fuels available. I guess we all know the answer to that. So that's obviously going to be a big hurdle. We will for sure see sort of the supply landscape changing in the long term. Pricing, I think we've also mentioned earlier today, who picks up the tab? I mean, I think what we also see from various clients, we talked to about alternative fuels, even biofuels. As soon as we start talking about the price, they are scared and then they back off because they don't want to pay for it right now, at least, unless they're being forced either by their client or by the bank or by the regulations. Obviously, that will be continuing the story. Other than that, it's from a compliance perspective and the policies. We've heard various people already speaking about this before. The standards, the regulations, IMO specifications, how do we look like it? It's just from a pricing perspective. It is, at this point of time, it's all over the place. It's a very big question mark, and it's very difficult to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We hear people talking about greenwashing, double counting, CO2 emissions. I think those are the major topics and the challenges that we all face. So really we're all in it together, trying to digest and to deal with all these challenges ahead. As said before, we have a really strong case towards biofuels. We've seen on the previous slide as well, where we see a B30 is a way forward to be able to comply. Also, if you look into the order book on the existing, starting with the existing fleet, today we only see actually less than 1% of the total fleet is actually running on dual fuel engines, which is basically close to nothing. Even looking into the existing order book and the new contracts that all come in play, we definitely see sort of methanol is taking it over from an LNG perspective, but other than that, the numbers are still fairly small. Hence, we still believe that conventional fuels are here to stay for the longer period of time, and that biofuels is sort of the way forward for the next 10 to 15 years. And why biofuels? Some of it has already been touched upon and also on the previous presentations. It is already, as we speak, widely available, but it's simply a drop-in fuel which can be mixed with high sulfur fuel up to gas oil. And we see the blend ratios being from a B10 up to even to a B100, which is a pure biodiesel. It's been pretty much globally tested by laboratories, shipping companies, and bunker suppliers. And very simply said, biofuels work in a car engine, so it will also for sure work in a ship's engine. That's as simple as it is. We've seen it's been approved already by most OEMs, and it's easily be blended and also now actually accepted by the last MEPC meeting up to a B100 without approval of any flex. aviation and also the road fuels. So there's a lot of things are happening, but the ISCC certification body is also justifying it that we're doing the right thing, and also we're meeting the sustainability criteria, and everything is being documented within the supply chain. Also, all counterparties dealing with biofuels, at least within the sourcing side, have to be ISCC certified to be able to trade these products. The fuel characteristics we have seen so far, actually it's quite a good uptick on the biofuel side, also being quite good because most of the products actually looking like a biodiesel. It's very low on viscosity, low on density. So actually it has a good way of actually using it in marine engines. And sort of lastly, we also can see even from a CI perspective, although it's not something which is on the topic for the offshore industry, but it also helps actually to comply to CI performance, which is usually is for the full year performance. So what we have seen actually last year, it was the first year for CI, is that we have seen actually customers buying biofuels in Q4, making sure that they were actually complying to the CI rating. And actually it's also the way forward for IMO on into the future, and we will see it for the FuelE Maritime as well. Secondly, but also importantly, it also meets the ESG requirements for various customers. As mentioned before, we have seen biofuels already being in play with aviation, which obviously is a very stringent industry, as well as on the road fuel side. So now also biofuels has already found its way into the marine industry. I think it actually already started and sort of was originated in the Netherlands already 7 or 8 years ago. Firstly, it was initially from the first generation feedstock, but we have actually sort of moved away from the industry, primarily also because it was mentioned before, it's just the food versus oil discussion. But also secondly is because IMO is actually not considering it as a low carbon fuel because it's not meeting the sustainability criteria. So it's being regarded as a fossil fuel. So therefore we're looking into the second and third generation of feedstocks, which are waste-based products. So there's a big variety of products which are part as the second and third generation. So it's an entire new world, new feedstocks, new GHG savings. Pretty much we can cover it based either on a FAME-based or HVO, which is a renewable biodiesel, which is what we feel is a bit too good to a quality initially for a marine engine, but the products are already available, and they're easily blended into the marine pool. This is actually basically my last slide, but I just sort of want to sort of summarize on the learnings that we've had. I think we've started the journey within the company into the decarbonization on July last year, where there has been a big focus on biofuels. We talk about alternative fuels in general, but biofuels is the main topic for the reasons I've just explained before. I can tell that we have since July last year, we've done 145 bunkers on biofuels, ranging from a B10 to a B100. Also ranging from Asia to the Americas. I think the smallest one we've done is five cubes up to 2,000 tons to a liner company. We have been serving pretty much customers around all segments, container companies, the cruise segment, the tankers, and also actually for the offshore industry. It's a complete new world. It's new decision-making. The decision-making processes, it takes sometimes 5 days to fix a deal, just in comparison to a 30 minutes deal, what we do usually on just conventional fuels. Because there are more people involved from the decision-making from the buyer's perspective. It's the same with the suppliers. It's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties. We look into new documentation, also in regards to FuelEU Maritime. We talk about sustainability. We get the proof of sustainability, the POS. It's a new document which is actually has come into the market. So how does it work? The new units of measurement and all related from a compliance perspective, also looking into ISCC. It's complete new. It's a complete new world. And I think one of the key takeaways from what we have seen, and also because we're competing against aviation, we're competing against the road fuels, is that it's going to be a challenge on the way forward. As I said, we don't know what the future fuel mix will be and how much of feedstocks will be available, but there will be competition. Percentage-wise, we potentially talk about 10-15% on the long term from a global fuel perspective. We can also clearly see here that Europe obviously is in the leading way. We have identified over 100 ports globally. Europe, for the same reasons, CI, EU ETS, and Fuel EU Maritime. I think the key takeaway is that what we've seen from our clients is also supply security. Due to the reasons I've said before, it's about the feedstocks, the specific blends from a B10 to a B100. Products are not ready-made, it's all tailor-made. It's not being on stock like it is for a high sulfur fuel or for a gas oil. So suppliers have to prepare themselves. It's special tank blending, so allocating the feedstocks. It's a game changer. So what we have seen is that we've been working on contractual agreements. So where we've seen that the conventional fuel business is very much focused on spot business, where customers are buying on a daily basis. We now foresee that the biofuels market will enter into contractual agreements in partnerships, making sure that the available fuel or the fuel is available in the ports based on specific blend ratios, also based on specific feedstocks related to the GHG savings that are required by the customer, because we've seen these demands already, and people talking about 2025 and onwards, which obviously is already very difficult to accommodate. So I think sort of the key message also to the audience and maybe to IMCA and to its members is that we first we have to start to collaborate. Is already being mentioned by the previous speakers, but I think that's very crucial into this journey. And then secondly, I would just also suggest that even 2027, it might sound far away, but that's clearly for the offshore market. That's sort of the key data set that we have to act right now and that we have to start preparing ourselves. That's all from my side. So thank you, and thank you very much for listening.